Hey everyone, it's Steve
and Tiffany
from
A Different Chick Farm and Orchard.
Alright, we don't do this type of video for everything like this, but we like to share a little bit. So this is a seed unpackaging video, and we're going to have another video about some tomatoes that we added here shortly. Secret, I've already seeded them, but we're going to pretend I haven't. But this is not tomatoes. This is something different. This is from one of our organic seed suppliers.
It is something that we thought about really hard because we eat a lot of this and it keeps for a long time.
It's not a high profit item.
No.
This is not something we'll ever grow a ton of on the farm to sell because there's not a lot of profit in it.
And it's something you can buy fairly cheap for the most part, but
can't buy it organic.
Can't buy it organic normally.
So you can find some organic sources, but usually there's nothing local to us. Maybe it's different in your all's area, but organic is important to us. We continue to switch over more and more of our diet to an organic or natural type diet. We're cutting more things out as time goes on. Yep. More things that we're not happy with the ingredients in or now. And
it's not just organic, it's we look into how it is grown by the organic supplier, because there are certain items that we don't agree with the way that they're grown, and whereas the USDA says they are organic, we don't agree they should be organic.
We think that, and we can't do this on everything, but we think that workers should be paid a living wage. Yep. One reason we don't hire people on the farm is that we don't have the ability to pay them a living wage yet. Yeah. So it just means we have to work extra hours and extra hard ourselves, because I honestly believe that if you can't pay somebody $18 to $24 an hour, and in some areas that's not going to be a living wage, and it's barely a living wage here. So that's what I'm saying. If you can't afford to pay somebody $18 to $24 an hour, you shouldn't employ them. Now, fast food is a different story. That's not meant to be a full-time job. I understand. But I'm talking about farming. We're talking about living on a farm. You need to be able to pay somebody $18 to $24 an hour, or you need to be able to pay them a wage plus food to eat, or room and board plus a wage plus food. It shouldn't be just room and board for their work, and it shouldn't be just food for their work. But you can do some compensation there. You know, if you can only afford to pay a minimum wage, then you compensate them with a food care package at the end of the week. You know, maybe they take home $40 worth of groceries at the end of the week. Well, now I say 40 because that's what our farm fresh produce boxes are that we sell on the farm. They're $40 boxes, and you know, that gives you a lot of groceries. Now, by no means will that feed a whole family of 5, but so this particular package is from High Mowing Seeds. Wow, they taped this baby up. Good. Of course, this is heavy seeds. A lot of the seeds we get don't weigh much. This package has some poundage to it. Not a lot of seeds weigh pounds, at least not on a small scale like for us. You know, I guess some people may be planting a pound of jalapeno seeds, but we don't plant a pound of jalapeno seeds.
You know, if you get a pound of radish seeds, that's a pound of radish seeds would do us probably like 10 years.
At least 3 minimum. So here's our bill from High Mowing. Tiffany will do the checklist. Now we do our checklist. Excuse if you can see the table. Excuse the mess. This is also where I'm doing my seeding and uppotting. So Tiffany will use a highlighter to highlight the item and how many of them so we can do. And so they're asking if we've ordered seed potatoes yet. And yes, we already have our seed potatoes. Yeah. And if you're local, we have seed potatoes available. So, all right. So this is a new one for us. A lot of these are new ones for us. So this is the Jacobs Cattle Dry Bean. Should be a half a pound.
Okay.
So, I can't remember all the details on Jacob's cattle, but I can tell you that I was really impressed with it. And by dry bean, you understand that this isn't a bean that you eat fresh. You're going to dry this bean, whether it's on the plant or separately.
And since I see this little package is like this, which is
it
wonderful.
Love that.
We can show you what they look like. So, once we
Might
get
want to
these
get up there a
growing,
little closer, Tiffany. Walk up there to the camera so they can see it.
once we get these growing and harvest them, this is what they're going to look like. So a beautiful dry bean.
And we'll save seeds from these. Cross-pollination, I have no idea how much that will happen or won't happen. But we'll see. All right. We multitask around here. So this is our Eclipse dry bean. And we have a half a pound of that. And I'll let Tiffany show you that if she wants to.
So these little bags, let me just tell you, is going to make me want to buy more of the bean seeds and other seeds probably from High Mowing, because that is great. So this is a black bean.
This is the bag. We've been looking at bags like this also.
It's a
for
small
some of
black
what we
bean.
do. Yeah, it is.
Very small. But that's okay. It probably will cook up a little bit easier than some of the large black beans.
Okay, so this one we went with a smaller pack, 500 seeds. This is not a dry bean. This is a bean we will grow for canning or fresh eating. So this is Compass French Filet beans. So there's 500 seeds in here, and this is a 55-day variety.
Those are actually dragon tongues, if I remember correct. Nope, that was the dragon.
Right.
Yeah.
No, she's wrong. So let me back up here. The Jacob's Cattle dry bean. It's a white heirloom, of course, you saw, with red splotches that performs well in cool conditions. And then the Eclipse dry bean was excellent flavor and color with high yields and tolerance to white mold. Upright plants are highly uniform. So next is our Silver Cloud
It's a dry bean.
cannellini dry bean. I hope I pronounced that right. It's a high yielding and disease resistant with dense, smooth, nutty flavor for cooking. The bean is rust tolerant also. Tiffany can show you that when she wants to. Now, if you're local to us in our local market, we will bring some of these for sale probably during the winter market at least.
So it is your white. They're probably not actually Great Northern beans, but they are comparable to like a Great Northern bean. Like around here, it's pinto beans and Great Northern beans.
So what we're trying to do is get to the point we don't got to buy beans at the store. We eat a lot of beans in soups and stews and chilies and so forth, and we like soup beans. We're Southerners. So our next one is a half a pound of the Quincy. Now we've grown this before. Quincy is a pinto bean. It's a upright bush bean. I can tell you a lot about it. And it's a high yielding variety, and it has a delicious creamy flavor for slow cooking and good for canning. And it has genetic resistance to BCMV, and I'm not smart enough to know what that is, and to CTV.
So when we grew this one, it's been 2 or 3 years ago now, maybe 3 years ago. We grew this in what is called our Three Sisters plot, which is also shaded by black walnuts and maples and old grapevines. And we actually had it planted with sweet potatoes. The sweet potatoes did really crappy, which was probably more my fault than anything because weeds took over. But the beans did great, even with all the weeds that we had going on. I mean, there was spiny amaranth. I mean, it was a weed bed. It was terrible. But even with all that, those did really well, and we got quite a bit from even the neglect that we had on them. So, that being said,
and there's 1,043 beans to a pound, so we got well over 500 seeds.
So your typical pinto bean.
Not as large as some of the pintos, but that's okay.
I think some of ours actually turned out longer or bigger than that the last time, but
Yep. Homesteading is about getting closer to self-sufficiency. It's about getting more and more on track with what you need. So, like I said, our main purpose behind these is to stock our pantry. We will sell some if we have a good crop, but so if you haven't figured out, this is the one Tiffany was just speaking of by mistake. This is the Dragon Lingerie Bush Bean. And it is a unique 6 to 8 inch flat streaked pods. Excellent as snap beans, but it's also great as a shell or dry for storage.
now the name of it actually has like 3 or 4 different names. One of the other names for it, it's like the name is Dragon and Langerie, so it's more probably like a lingerie, but I'm not French, so I have no idea. But people around here call them
right.
dragon tongue
Right.
because we can say tongue.
Lingerie. Lingerie. I don't know. Lingerie. I don't know how you pronounce it.
We're not going to try to butcher it anymore. We're just going to call it dragon
The
tongue.
streaks fade when cooked, and the seeds are purple.
Oh. So let's look at that.
Interesting. I spent a lot of time going through a lot of beans on a lot of different sites. And I did find some other cool ones.
I mean,
So there is purple. There is purple. That's purple.
Yeah.
So the bean would remind you of a pinto bean, but it's got purple in it instead of black. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time going through a lot of different websites, looking at a lot of different organic beans, trying to figure out what we wanted for this year, and asking Tiffany her opinion on some of it. And then we had to mark my list down because I had a list of about that long, and we're not planting or caring for that many beans, so we kept condensing our list until we got to
Now,
this.
the great thing is, if these do really well this year, all of these beans that are dried beans we'll put in our mason jars, and we may not have to grow those for another year or 2.
Yeah, that's the idea here. Is most of your seeds will last. Bean seeds will last a little while. Your germination rate will go down, but even corn, if you properly take care of it, you can get several years. Germination rate will come down. Now, some of your modern corn doesn't keep well from one year to the next at all. And if you have a treated or a coated seed, it usually doesn't keep well at all, period. Coated seeds are notorious for not being good 1 to 2 years later at all. On the other hand, we've had tomato seeds that we've had for 9 years before that were still germinating. Now, they were not germinating amazingly, but they were still germinating. So you go from a 90%, 95, 99% germination down to a 10% germination. And at that point, that's when you restock your seed source for your homestead, because the next year you may not get germination. So that means you save seeds for sure. Now the beans, we won't let them drop that far. When germination drops to 50%, it'll be time for us to put new beans back in.
But the good thing about that is, if they're not good for seed anymore, they're still good to eat.
Right. So the plan here would be that we'll probably grow these varieties every other year, maybe 3 at the most. And we'll add more varieties to our repertoire next year so that we have
You're not French. You're not supposed to say
not
those
French.
words. No.
I'm sorry. She says I'm not French. And I'm not. My family's English. But we can add these varieties to our homestead so that if there's ever an issue where, things hit the fan, so to speak, that we will have a seed bank that can help us survive. Now, we could survive on just pinto beans.
Yeah.
But it might be funner to survive on pinto beans and something that tastes a little different. The black beans or pinto beans, either one lend themselves well to Mexican food.
When we have soup beans, we like to have pinto beans and Great Northern beans.
Yeah.
So, and then sometimes I like to throw in, which we're not growing this year, maybe next year, baby lima beans or lima beans.
Yeah, we started to grow a lima bean this year, but we decided we would wait one more year on the lima beans because we don't eat a ton of lima beans, but it is real nice in soups.
And then you can cook them and put butter in them. And my papa always made them butter beans.
Yep.
So,
that's definitely a southern thing.
Yeah. We got a lot of southern stuff
But
around
think about this if you're getting into homesteading. Maybe you're new to homesteading. Maybe you're looking into homesteading. So look at the things you can do to keep you from being reliant on someone else. Think about things like beans, tomatoes, corn, potatoes.
We have been going through this week and deciding on what are the staples that we buy on a regular basis, because we are actually not just organic certified, but real organic project certified. And we watched the symposium this week, and it got us thinking that maybe we need to watch the stores that we're buying from. One of our big local ones that we do buy from is
And don't
Kroger.
mention name. Now she can't finish the story. But we do buy a lot from Kroger, but she can't finish the story because we don't down nobody.
But there is so many chain grocery stores out there that are not treating farmers and suppliers and employees the way that they need to be. And so not just do we need to think where our food comes from, like from the farmer, we need to think, is that farmer being financially took care of? Is the supplier that is buying from that farmer, what do they have in mind? What is their heart? For us, we're looking for something more local, something that more, is community driven. And so we're looking at, what are the staples that we actually have to go buy at the grocery store? Is there somewhere else we can buy them local?
Or can we grow them?
Yeah, or can we grow them?
We can't grow cinnamon.
Yeah.
So it's going to have to come from somewhere if we use it.
I can technically have a cow, but do I have time for a cow?
We don't have room for a cow.
We don't have room for a cow.
We'd need more acreage, or we'd have to give up garden.
Yeah. So I'm going to have to buy milk. And yes, there are a lot of local milk options, but the problem is they do not grow to the organic standards. They do not feed organic. They might be grass-fed, but they spray stuff on their grass. They spray it on the sides of the fence. There's stuff that people don't realize they're doing that is wrong, and it actually does affect my stomach and my gastrointestinal system. So I have to have that organic milk, but it's also because there's also organic milk that doesn't do well, and I don't like the way that they're done.
So back on the homesteading thing and off of our tangent. So if you're going to homestead, and Tiffany may have to go check her food.
Speaking
she's got
of
on the stove.
homesteading.
Yeah. If you're going to homestead, and the camera's going to rock when she walks by the way. But if you're going to homestead, you need to think about what you can do to make yourself less reliant on someone else. Because if things go sour, we all just went through a pandemic that no one enjoyed. But if things go sour, you want to be able to get through it. And while it might be easy to run to Kroger's, Walmart, Publix, Fresh Market, and pick up a bag of beans now, it may not be then. And we run into that during the pandemic. We found out that things were getting harder to get, and so we thought we would buy a couple of staples. And when I say stock up, I mean this in a small sense. It wasn't like we were buying 50 pound bags of beans, but we wanted to go buy a couple of 20-pound bags of beans or something like that.
10-pound bags.
Well, we were looking for the bigger ones at first.
Oh, okay.
And the bigger ones wasn't available nowhere. So then we said, let's go buy 10-pound bags. Mm-hmm. They weren't available nowhere. And so then we went to Kroger's and see what the biggest bag was they had. and it was a 1 pound bag, and they had like 6 of them on the shelf. 6. That didn't change over the next several months. That they didn't have dry beans. They didn't have 2 varieties or even 3 varieties of kidney beans. They had 1.
Yep.
They didn't. The dry beans just wasn't there. Rice got hard to get.
Yeah.
And you know, those staples that make your life easier may not be available during hard times. And you know, it's not about fear. It's about being prepared. It's about not having to worry about feeding your family. You know, like Tiffany said about a cow. If we had a cow that we could milk, then we don't have to worry about where the milk's available.
Because there's sometimes that I go to my local grocer and they do not carry it at Kroger, and they don't have my milk, and I'm like, I know it's a hard time getting it in, and they do have a hard time getting in because they're one of the only ones that's around here.
Well, we have 3 stores that carry it. The only one of them carries it in gallons, or 2 of them carries it in gallons. Yeah. And so the problem is the half-gallon jug costs almost as much as the gallon. Mm-hmm. It's real close. Yeah. So
it's like $6 for half a gallon, or $8.50 for a gallon. So
yeah, and sometimes $6.99 for half a gallon. So it's just, it don't make no sense. Yeah. It's expensive enough to begin with. Mm-hmm. But she has to have organic milk. We've been down this road. We did find a semi-local place for a while that we could buy milk off of that was not organic, but grew organically on their place. Yeah. And it worked, but sadly they got bought out by the state to put a highway through their farm. So I can't buy their milk no more. But we would make monthly trips there and buy 3 and 4 gallons of milk at a time because it was fresh. So it would keep for about 3 weeks in our refrigerator or longer. And usually we go through a gallon a week.
Fresh, non-homogenized. So if you didn't shake it up, you had a big clump.
But it was good milk. Now, I prefer what we're drinking now. That's my preference. But everybody doesn't have the same taste buds. So, all right, guys. So, talking about homesteading, talking about seeds, let me give you one more here that you may not think about how important it can be to your seed bank. Peppers. We specialize in peppers. We use peppers to make dry seasoning. We use it, of course, for pepper powder, which is a dry seasoning, but people think of that differently. We use it to freeze food to put in the freezer for eating. We dehydrate peppers that can be used later for seasoning or so forth. And we will freeze dry peppers and use those in soups and stews and so forth later. So peppers are a good one. The seasoning is something that we started years ago trying to get to the point that we wouldn't have to buy seasoning from the store. We were tired of going and buying burger seasoning and steak seasoning and pork chop seasoning and fajita seasoning and taco seasoning. And so we decided, hey, let's grow enough pepper varieties that we can make our own seasoning. So we take that and mix it with garlic and a little bit of sea salt sometimes, depending on what we're doing. We don't eat much salt, but you gotta have a little bit in your diet. And we mix it and make our own seasoning. So think about that for your homestead. Think about what you can do to do what you want to do on a larger scale. And if this interests you, stuff like homesteading and how to be more sufficient, comment below, ask questions. Maybe you'll give me an idea for the next video. This is just a highlight reel of what you need seed-wise, but I thought it'd be a good time to talk about it since we're talking about beans and something that we're doing more of on the farm. So I hope you've enjoyed. If you have, like and subscribe. We've got more videos coming up this year. There'll be some cool grow videos, some harvest videos, some tasting videos. You might even get to see tasting videos on some of these before the year is up.
Yep.
All right, guys. Thank you. I'm going to let Tiffany turn the camera off. See you later.